Last night I was looking at the results for the Batley and Spen by-election, and Anne-Marie Waters for Britain Party got, I think, 97 votes. Now, it could have been a lot worse. I thought she would be lucky to get 50. This result was totally predictable. And of course, I predicted it, and so did everyone else, just about everyone else. And, Anne-Marie has this idea that for Britain can, if you like, come to power democratically, that it can promote itself, explain itself, in time grow, etc., and become a political force. This is nonsense. It's complete nonsense. There is no possibility of for Britain coming to power or becoming a significant force. That's not going to happen. In this society, anyone, and it's not just Anne-Marie, no opposition political party can succeed in Britain today. No one who opposes the woke agenda. Now, you see, Anne-Marie Anne-Marie thinks she's living in England. But England doesn't exist. It's like Ireland. Ireland doesn't exist. John Waters would often say, in speaking of the media, he would say, we don't have a media anymore. We have something else. And this is true of the For Britain situation, the situation Britain and Ireland. We don't have a democratic system anymore. We have something else. And it's simply impossible for any political party that opposes this woke agenda to come to power. It's impossible. It's impossible for Anne-Marie Waters and for Britain to get its message out. It's impossible. It's not difficult. It's impossible. That should be obvious to everyone. Now, the question is, you see, when Anne-Marie thinks about things, Anne-Marie has a sort of a disconnect here. You see, Anne-Marie thinks she's living in England, but England doesn't exist. It's something else. And the things that could happen or might have happened in England, they cannot happen in this thing, whatever it is, this something else, this fascistic something else. It's simply not possible to. Some things are physically impossible, and this is physically impossible. So what Anne-Marie and the For Britain Party need to do at this stage is to sit down and recalibrate everything, to find a new strategy. Because the one Anne-Marie is following, it's a dead-end street. It's going nowhere. There's no possibility of success. Now, looking at this whole situation realistically, is there any hope of anyone turning back this woke agenda? Realistically, no. When you look at what's happening out in England, in Ireland, across the West generally, Ireland is finished. There isn't one single reason to believe that Ireland can get through this. Ireland is, in many respects, it's a worse situation than Britain. The wokeness in Ireland is even more extreme to that in England. And there is nothing going to stop this in Ireland. Ireland's finished. The same would seem to be true in England. And if you want to solve a problem, you've got to look squarely at the problem and acknowledge that it exists. So I'm waffling on a bit. So what Anne-Marie needs to do, and the Forbidden Party needs to do, they need to sit down and rethink the whole strategy. It's, for any ordinary sort of sane person looking at the political situation in England, if you ask the question, is it possible for this woke thing to be turned around? People would say no. There really doesn't appear to be. A lot of people are now saying, well, the game is up, it's over. And that's what all the evidence points to. I can't think of any way that this can be overturned, that we can stop this wokeness. Having said that, the old cliche, while there's life, there's hope. Not long ago, none of us were thinking of a global pandemic. We all knew that that could happen. We all knew that was a sort of a danger in the background, some disease or something might come along. But we weren't expecting it. So you never know what's around the corner. And in this woke world, you never know what will happen. It is possible that wokeness will just, that will hang itself. But that might not happen. For instance, for years and years and years, and I was totally wrong about this, so was everyone else. For years and years and years, I was saying, as things got worse and worse, I would say to people, well, one day such and such will happen, and that'll wake people up. Or one day this will be the situation, and then people will wake up. But I was wrong. I was totally wrong. If the people were going to wake up, if they were going to put an end to this, they would have done it a long time ago. So all the evidence suggests that the people are just rolling over, that they don't care. I don't care enough. Having said that, it really isn't over as long as you're breathing and you're fighting back. There's always a possibility. But Anne-Marie for Britain, they're going to have to sit down, rethink. Anne-Marie's going to have to stop all this nonsense of this fantasy she has of for Britain functioning like a normal political party. It's not possible. It's absolutely not possible. And central to that is Anne-Marie has to understand that England doesn't exist. You see, Anne-Marie is thinking logically, but she's not living in England anymore. She's living in this something else. And the logic doesn't matter. Science doesn't matter. Objective reality doesn't matter. She's living in an alternative universe now. And she's thinking in terms of the old England. Let me put it this way. One problem I have when I'm thinking about all this and trying to work it out and figuring out what I should do. One of the problems I'm aware of, and this is a huge problem. You see, I'm not living in Ireland. This is not Ireland. Ireland was a place where words meant something, and we all knew what they meant. That's no longer the case. The word violence doesn't mean what it used to mean. Today, if you say, well, there's aspects of maybe the transgender thing I'm not sure about, that's violence. that's violence. If you say, okay, nothing against immigrants, nothing against immigration, but maybe this aspect of that, maybe, no, that's violence. The uh, the idea of having a different opinion, the idea of even suggesting there might be a different point of view, that's violence now, literally, and it's called violence. You're accused, if you question anything, and we say transgender, whatever it might be, immigrant, the LGBT agenda, even suggesting that maybe there might be something to think about, that there might be some different point of view, that suggestion now, that's violence. People will say, I feel violated, I feel threatened, and such people have been oppressed for years and years, and that, you know, that simply wanting to talk about something is violence. You know, you're obliged now to accept everything unquestionably, totally, no matter how bizarre, no matter how extreme it becomes. And the idea of thinking, because when you're talking about something, that's thinking out loud. And the idea of even thinking about any of these things, it is literally considered violence. So violence doesn't mean what it used to mean, you know, and you see all these, there's more and more reports of violence against women, particularly in universities, and the rise of violence against women. You know, violence doesn't mean what it used to mean in that context. Violence literally means, and I've mentioned this before, you smile at a girl and maybe she doesn't fancy you, well, that's violence. It's, anyhow, I'm rambling on a bit, but you know, we're living in a society where language, the words you're using, and you think with words, those words that Anne-Marie uses, let's say in a head working things out, those words have a totally different meaning in this new society, whatever it is. But not only do they have a whole new meaning, they also at a fundamental level mean nothing. Because anything can be in anything now. You know, woke people will just, anything they say. You know, we have a political house, a media, all these people who simply say things which are objectively not true. But that's all irrelevant. You know, words don't mean anything. There is no truth. There's no scientific truth. You know, science just, there is no history. History is being rewritten. Every child in England and Ireland now, they go down to the library to get their book, or their parents go in to buy them a new book or something. You literally have, in these books, history being rewritten. It's this. We're not living in Ireland. We're not living in England. This woke thing. This is something that has never existed in all of human history. Quite simply, that's it. This is a world where there is no reality, where woke people can simply make it up as they go along, and they don't even pretend. You know, sometimes if you're lying to people, you might pretend, or you try to make obscure, let's say, the truth. There's no pretense anymore. There's no pretense. A man is a woman. You know, a man, there's a lot of talk now about transgenderism in sport, and you had this weightlifter who become a woman, etc. You know, you can physically see on television, you can watch these transgender athletes. You can see them run. They run like men. The weightlifters, they lift weights like men. You've got a cyclist that's gotten his name. You're supposed to refer to him as she, but it's a man. I've forgotten his name. Now, this guy has done all the things that you're supposed to do. He's gone on, he's reduced his hormone levels, he's all these treatments that are supposed to equal the field. He's done all of those things. But all you have to do is look at him. All you have to do is watch him ride his bike. It doesn't matter what you do. You know, men have an obvious advantage in these sports. So, of course, you see, here's the thing. You see, this whole thing of transgenderism in sport, it might get a lot worse, and it's heading in that direction. And of course, if it really gets bad enough, there will be no women athletes left. You know, if enough men win, pretending to be women, win gold medals and all that, maybe. Well, you think maybe that will wake people up, but I'm saying that, but I don't mean it, because stuff like that has happened over and over again, and people don't care. So, going to finish up here, but there needs to be a serious rethink, and Anne-Marie needs to, and I'll leave on this note. Excuse me on my waffling, etc., but I'll go to that one point. Anne-Marie is not living in England, and she needs to cop onto that. It's something else. It's something out of a science fiction film, except it's a reality. And the thought process, the logic that she applies, that would have worked in England. This is a parallel universe. And logical thinking doesn't work. So, a serious rethink.